Hey guys.
Hey guys.
Today we wanted to just explore some of the best pieces of financial advice that have changed our lives forever. We're currently away on one of our couples time away where we just consider our finances and we just talk about our goals and dreams and so on, and we just thought this would be a really good topic to explore today.
That's right, guys. And if you have not subscribed to our channel, please do hit that subscribe button, show us some support, and get notified when we publish our videos on a weekly basis.
We hope this video really inspires you guys, and if you're really enjoying it, please make sure you hit that like button as you are watching as well. Okay, so to get started, what's going to be our very first point? What was the first piece of financial advice that you can think of that inspired you and changed your life?
Okay, so the first bit of advice that I got, and I guess it was from observing my older siblings, was that if you can solve a problem, you will always earn an income. Now, thinking back to when I was young, growing up, I have 3 older brothers, and my oldest siblings, I used to go with him to computer fairs where he would buy random computer parts, configure them based on clients' requirements, and then he would then sell them. And this was at a time when there was no,
No PC World.
No PC World or Currys. Like, basically, it was rare for people to have a computer in their home. So he would then configure them based on people's requirements. And he always had clients that he would create these computers for. And it was very basic in terms of the marketing. It was literally just flyering in people's letterboxes. And what amazed me was that he was doing this on the side whilst he was doing his degree. And I learned from a young age that, you know, if you can solve anybody's problems, you will always be rewarded for it handsomely. And it doesn't have to be something that you have necessarily, basically anything that you're talented with, anything that you feel that somebody else can benefit from, you can package it in a way where you can generate an income from. And yeah, that's what I've learned from an early age.
Well, thinking about that, one that I can definitely relate to a lot, and thanks for sharing that, is the one on paying your mortgage off early. And there are actually 2 stories that come to mind when I think about this. The very first was a guy who I met, who I went to a men's conference. It was a church conference, and I met this guy who told his story on the stage. And afterwards, I wanted to network and connect with him, and he worked in the insurance business. So I met him at the Lloyd's Insurance building in London, around there, for some lunch. And he basically told his story. He has 3 daughters, and they were way older than our kids. And he had a really happy marriage for, I think, over 20 years. And he said to me, look, one of the best things I ever did in my life was to pay off my mortgage early. I just paid it off. I didn't even listen to anyone. I just did it. And it's the best thing I've done. And then he said, you will also get a guaranteed return when you do it, among many other things. and that's one of the things that really stuck with me. Another story tied to it is when I worked for another financial services company. And there was this girl who worked across from me, this Asian girl, who was not the most popular girl in the office, but she was doing something I really admired. I asked her once, what are you going to do with your bonus when you get paid? And she said, I'm going to use it to pay off my mortgage early. I've been paying it off and I'm almost done. And one thing I observed about her was that she felt almost untouchable in the office. She didn't really feel that bothered about anybody else. She didn't really care whether they're doing redundancies or whatever. Something about that attitude of not being so bothered because you don't have a huge weight of debt on you really stuck with me. So yeah, that's where that came from.
I love that so much.
What's your next one?
So my next one is, so just write them all down. Never accept the first price. So I was talking to my good friend, childhood friend. She's got such good memory. She remembers like the smallest things that I did and I've totally forgotten. She said to me, Mary, I always marveled at how effortlessly you used to haggle. And she said I would haggle anywhere.
You're good at haggling.
Whether it was McDonald's, when I used to eat at McDonald's, to the big kind of like designer stores for like clothes, I would always haggle. And when she said that to me, I was like, oh, okay. Like to me, I didn't see it as a thing.
Something you're good at.
Exactly. It's because it was something that I grew up seeing my mum doing on a daily basis from when we would shop in, you know, the market stores, and she would like haggle for like Plevera chicken. A few pennies and pounds off, or like snapper fish. But you know, that skill then carried me through to, as you would know, whether we'd go.
We went. You went on holiday. I remember went to Zanzibar, and that woman said to you, "That thing is $10," and you basically, her entry point was, $1. You went in with $1, and I was just like, I felt so embarrassed. I was just like, oh my God. And you kept a straight face as well. You're like, and the woman, she expected you to say $1, which is interesting. And eventually, I think you paid like $3 eventually for it.
Yeah. I
So
think
the haggling is definitely saving money.
yeah, the haggling has saved money, and I think for me, what solidified that confidence was the fact that I went so low, and this isn't even just an example in Zanzibar, from whether it's Egypt or anywhere we went. And what surprised me was how easily they accepted it.
Yeah.
So it made me think, well, what really is the value of this item that we're asking for? Maybe you're really just mucking it up, regardless. Maybe are you because it's the accent.
They judge you straight away. You look too, you look like
the pounds, the dollar signs.
Yeah.
But anyway, that skill has then, and confidence has then followed us through. So when it came to us buying our first home, we were able to negotiate, and for me, it wasn't really a big thing because it was something that I was used to doing.
Well, give us some context. What were some things we negotiated and kept? In the house.
So we basically negotiated the bar stools in the kitchen, all the white goods, so the fridge, freezer.
The American fridge freezer.
The washing machine at the time.
The washing machine, the dishwasher.
Yeah. And another thing, but one thing also that we've noticed is that if there's a win-win situation, then you're more likely to succeed in this negotiation. So, for example, we were pregnant with our first child. They had children of their own. They had a playhouse and a garden. I think for them, it was more beneficial for them to sell the house to a family
of course.
rather than somebody else, because they knew that we would take better care of their home. So always look for a win-win situation where the seller would also benefit from the sale too.
I love that. My next financial advice that changed my life was the one that said, don't rely on only one income. So this one came from my mum, who is my huge inspiration in so many ways. From so many aspects of my life have come about because I watched my parents, and my mum in particular, given her personal journey. And this advice came because although I'd trained as a chartered accountant, I now had a job, and I was like, yeah, man, I have a job with a pay slip.
Pay slip.
No more brown envelopes. I now had a job with a pay slip. But the one thing she'd always say is like, what else are you doing to sustain yourself?
Yeah.
That was the question, you know? Yeah. She'd always ask this question. I'm like, I've got a job though, you know? She's like, but what else are you doing to sustain yourself? What she was really saying there is don't rely on one income. And I really understood that when I got made redundant.
Yeah.
That's when it hit home. I'm like, Mum speaks from wisdom, lots of wisdom.
100%.
What's your next one?
Talking of not relying on one income, I've also got something similar, and this is what I've actually learned from Robert Kiyosaki, and this was inspired by the cash flow quadrant, where he's got this kind of diagram where on the left hand side of the quadrant you've got the employee and the self-employed, and on the right hand side of the quadrant you've got the investor and the business owner. And so what I learned from him is that you want to be on the right hand side of the quadrant where you're a business owner and an investor. Now, this isn't to bash employees or self-employed, because you can absolutely be employed, which would help you to have the income to then become an investor, right?
That's where we all start. Everybody starts as an employee.
Exactly. And it's just so important, because if you're an investor and you're a business owner, you're not so reliant on your employer.
The paycheck.
You're not so reliant on the paycheck and the one source of income, which you were saying.
I love that. So what we want essentially is more investors. So this comes to ownership and control, basically.
Yeah.
The more ownership and control you have over various assets that create an income, the better.
Absolutely. And just to your point as well, like when I graduated from uni, it was during the global financial crisis. Within 1 year of having my graduate job, I got made redundant. I was blessed to then get another job 4 months later. But in that time I was in that corporate job for 5 years, there were 3 rounds of redundancies. 3 rounds.
Wow.
And even though I wasn't affected, I could see my colleagues who were affected. There was so much uncertainty. It was a horrible time.
Horrible.
And to be so reliant on just one source of income is not really where you want to be at all. Yeah.
The next one, the next piece of financial advice I received, and this is actually more of an observation, was create a chocolate fountain. Let me explain what that means.
I like this already. Sounds good.
So I went to, some of you might know from our older videos, I did an executive MBA at the Judge Business School, University of Cambridge. And There's a whole story about how I got in there. But anyway, I got in there, did my exec MBA there for 2 years.
Who wants to hear that story?
And yeah, another video. But I did that exec MBA, and during that exec MBA, there was a guest speaker who came to that event to speak to us as students. And he just came in, he seemed very fearless. He basically was talking about how he was like out exploring for various metals in different parts of the world. He was basically doing stuff that no one in that room could ever envision doing. Stuff that you're like, this is so out of the ordinary. The kind of stuff he's doing, the levels of entrepreneurship, the sort of stuff he's done. And then he stopped and said, he wanted to explain to us how he was able to do it. He said, what you need to do in your life is to create for yourself. He had this example of a chocolate fountain. You essentially want to create for yourself a vehicle, something, or a business, something that throws out income on a regular basis. This is the visualization he was giving us. And that has always stuck with me, because he's saying basically, you want to create something that sits on its own such that you can then use your time to do other things. And his way of explaining it was a chocolate fountain. Essentially, it's a never-ending flow. It's almost like something that maybe creates you passive income, something that just gives you that regular, recurring income, which is interesting because if you look at our journey so far, we've actually prioritized that type of income over time. Anything that means that it's kind of recurring or it's coming when we're not necessarily swapping time for money has been something that's given us a lot more, we've given more of our attention to. So, and we've made lots of videos to encourage you guys to do a similar thing. So yeah, that's one thing that stood out for me.
I love that analogy, and for the foodies out there, hopefully that kind of analogy hit home more for you.
What's your next one?
So one moment, please. Let me just scroll.
Okay.
Scroll.
Whilst you're bringing that up, you got it?
Yes, I have. So my next one is to buy assets, not liabilities. And this is another one, a transformative lesson that I've learned from Robert Kiyosaki. So simple, but yet a lot of people actually get this one wrong. Essentially, liabilities keep you poor, assets keep you rich. Examples of a liability are cars. You buy it from the car showroom, the moment you drive it out, it's already depreciating in value. An example of an asset could be your property or your home. Now, when I say home, when we were engaged, you had a spare bedroom.
Yes,
remember?
yes,
and I encouraged you to rent out that room.
Yeah. We got a guy from Singapore who moved in with us.
So for that, I think, was it 11 months before we got married, you had a
Yes, it was extra income.
And that money then helped pay for part for our honeymoon, where we also actually went to Asia, funnily enough. So it's about turning if you do have a liability, seeing how you can turn it into an asset, but acquire more assets. And examples of assets could be stocks and shares or property, REITs. What can you get from your stocks and shares? You can get dividends. That's a form of an asset. Or rent from your property is a form of an asset. So
there are lots of different things that one can do.
Types.
We've made lots of videos, which we'll link to below and above, whether it's if you want to create for yourself a successful online business, or if you want to invest in the stock market, we've got an entire playlist dedicated to that. Or if you want to get your first home or invest in investment property, again, we've got various resources. In fact, speaking of that, for those who are interested, Mary and I run a sister platform called Financial Joy Academy, where some of you guys who watch are members in that community. If you're interested, want to learn more about it, again, we'll link to that below and above, because we'll cover in a lot more depth a lot of those things. And how to actually implement them, obviously. The final piece of advice I received, and this was to buy the FAANGs. The FAANGs is an acronym, FAANG, right?
FAANGs.
Let me just explain, right? So this is just, it's just an acronym for a bunch of companies. So Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, and Google.
Right.
Now, I used to work at a company that used to offer what's called prime brokerage services. So they would do stuff like stock lending. They'd lend stock to traders, and those traders would use it to go and like short sell and do all the stuff that they do, right? But my job in that company was as a head of finance. So I basically saw everything that happened, and I attended board meetings and that kind of stuff. But whilst I was working at that company, one of the things I really admired about the three guys who owned the company, who were in their 30s, was that they would just walk around the office and they would talk about their investments. I could see them like getting excited about buying these FAANGs. You know, they talk about how much they've made on Apple or on Amazon. And that was really interesting for me because at that stage, I already had started investing money.
Early stages.
But what was interesting observing that was, what I realized thinking back now is that those guys were effectively backing the, what's the 20% of that will give them the 80% return. So if you think about a good example, pick the S&P 500 would be a good example for today. You know, that list of companies, that index, for example, only a handful of companies actually give it, you know, all the returns that it has. So thinking about it, back to it now, what they were really teaching me indirectly by just observing them was that, you know, you should actually back the winners if you can, you know. And a sensible way of backing the winners today is not just to go and pick them out as individual stocks, is you can now buy them in an index and that kind of stuff. But for me, seeing that happen like live in an office environment, because we work in that sort of, it's just open space and everyone's just like, everyone's everywhere and people are just like taking calls from traders, they're just doing stuff. But I'm just observing, you know, just observing. And it's later on down the line, those things started to really almost soak into my consciousness to kind of help me then start to make my own decisions. So yeah, buying those companies were actually some of the ones we did. So our earliest investments were in these companies. We still hold Apple stock, we still hold Amazon stock, we still hold Google stock, for example, even today, in our pensions, for example. So yeah,
awesome.
Those really stood with me.
If you don't want to buy individual stocks, like Ken said, then you can look at index funds and ETFs, where you spread your risk, basically.
Absolutely, and we've made videos related to that. Guys, would love to hear from you guys in the comments. This is a completely unplanned video, but which of those, in fact, what was the best piece of financial advice that you ever received or that changed your life? Jump in the comments and let us know.
Thank you so much, guys, for watching this video. We hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to this channel if you haven't done so already, so you can get notified when we publish on a weekly basis. And share this video with somebody if you think they will find it useful. Thanks so much for watching and for your support.
And as always, guys, in all things, be thankful and seek joy.
Take care, guys. Much love.
See you soon.